Greetings, Chuck the Blue Wizard here, and I am once again going on a quest. A hero quest. I hear you cry, did you finish the rest of those minis? No. No, I did not. This time it's a little something different. HeroQuest has 4 major heroes. We've got the Barbarian, the Dwarf, the Elf, and the Wizard. There are also a bunch of other heroes that come in expansion packs and hero packs, but we're not going to talk about them today. But I did paint them all, and you can see them in that video here. So with those 4 original heroes, I think that there's a little problem there. And I decided I'm going to fix it and make my own hero to fix that problem. So before we go into the hero that I made, let's talk a little bit about what the heroes who come in the core set are. You have the Barbarian. He's got the most body points of any character in the game, which means he can take the most damage. He's your tanky, smashy, washy, I can deal lots of damage boy as well. That's about all he can do. There's the Dwarf, who is almost as resilient as the Barbarian, and he can disarm traps. And he can disarm traps better than anyone with a toolkit, which is an item a hero can buy, but they're still never going to be able to disarm a trap as well as a dwarf. The Elf is kind of a hybrid class. He can use some spells, and he can use most, if not all, combat equipment. And then finally, there's the Wizard, who is my favorite hero for obvious reasons. I know what you're thinking when you think of the Wizard. Usually you're thinking this. Or maybe something like this. Or maybe even this.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
But with the HeroQuest Wizard, you're a little off. Now the Wizard for HeroQuest is a little bit more of a utility character, more so than they are a big tactical nuke that you can deploy. I'm sure a lot of people have homebrewed rules that can make the Wizard a little bit more of a glass cannon, boom, blow things up kind of guy. But that's not what I'm doing here today. So why is the Wizard in HeroQuest not burning everything to the ground with a fireball? Well, that's because of how spells work in HeroQuest. In the core box set, which is all we're going to be talking about today, we're not going to talk about the extra spells that come in later expansions. You get 4 main elements. There's earth, wind, and fire. There's also water, but I just wanted to make that stupid joke. And there's nothing wrong with water. In fact, it's a pretty good school to choose from if you're a wizard. And that sort of brings us to the big problem with the Wizard. In the core set, you get to choose from 3 different schools out of the 4. The 4th leftover one goes to the Elf. Now, a lot of times with the way that my group usually ran dungeons, we would give the earth spells to the Elf. Now, this isn't necessarily the most optimal way to play, and the reason for that is because the Wizard is the physically weakest of all of the heroes. Earth has a spell Rock Skin, which lets them get an additional defense die, which can bring the Wizard up to 4 until they take a hit of damage. It's the only way that the Wizard is going to get 4 defense dice. Very limited armor options for them in the game. And also, if you look at the rest of the spells, the vast majority of them are utility spells. There's spells to make enemy monsters miss turns, there's spells to be able to pass through walls in the dungeon, and there are, of course, healing spells. The Wizard and the Elf are the only ones who can heal with magic. All your other healing is left over to potions, what you're using most of the time, since healing magic is so scarce. Because once you use a spell in a dungeon, it's gone for the rest of the dungeon, unless you have an item or a scroll that has that same spell on it. So since spells are so limited, the Wizard kind of has to hang at the back, and when it hits the fan, they have to do some healing, which is not how the Wizard fantasy sort of works most of the time. The Fire School has 2 offensive spells, one that deals 1 body point and one that deals 2, but monsters can deflect it by rolling a 5 or a 6 on a die. But for some reason, whenever I play HeroQuest using the app, the monster always breaks my spells. There is one more spell that deals damage, the Genie, which has an attack of 5 attack dice, which is more than any weapon that you can use. But again, you can only use it once by default. So usually you save your spells for a big boss or something with a lot of life points that's really hard to kill. So what does this mean? The Wizard is relegated to oftentimes being the healer, Because if you have the earth and water spell schools, that means you're going to be doing a lot of healing because you've got 2 healing spells that you can use. Should the wizard be doing all the healing? No, wizards don't heal.
How do I
cast a healing spell?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
People know this. This is a trope at this point when it comes to using wizards in fantasy. Wizards don't have healing spells. But HeroQuest, when it was developed, is an older game and didn't really have that whole like class dynamics that we're sort of thinking of today. It wasn't as influenced by something like, a Dungeons and Dragons. So who heals? The elf? Well, with only access to 1 school of spells, they're limited to 1 healing spell per dungeon. But if the wizard is going to be a mix of offensive spells and control spells, who picks up the slack? And that's why I made the Cleric, a classic support class to fix the lack of support in HeroQuest. That's right, I fixed HeroQuest.
HeroQuest is the best game ever made, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
Obviously, HeroQuest doesn't need fixing, and I'll say up at the top, I am probably not the first person to have created a Cleric for HeroQuest. But I am the person who made this Cleric and the person whose channel you should subscribe to, and also leave a like down below and support me on Patreon if you like this video and you think that I'm kind of a cool guy. Oh, a fair warning, this is going to involve game design. If that's something that interests you, hopefully you like this video and you do all the things that I just talked about, liking, subscribing, thumbs up, If you don't like game design, then you can maybe skip ahead to this time marker where I will talk a little bit more about how the Cleric plays and a little bit more about the individual spells and things like that. So for the design inspiration, I pulled a lot from Dungeons and Dragons. The Cleric in Dungeons and Dragons isn't some cloth-wearing priest shouting blessings from the back. No, the Cleric gets in the mix with a shield and a mace and bashes undead on the head, and they can wear chainmail or even in some places something up to a heavy chain plate. So that's where I took my inspiration for the gameplay design from. I wanted the Cleric to be able to wear chainmail, and I wanted them to only be able to wield blunt weaponry. Now, HeroQuest doesn't have any blunt weaponry, so I made that too. I also wanted them to not be able to wear plate mail, and that includes any artifact plate mail that they can find, like Borin's armor. And lastly, I wanted them to not be able to use any of the magical equipment that the wizard could use, like a wand of magic or a ring of spell storing or a potion of recall, because their power comes from a divine source. They have their own way to get back their magic in the dungeons besides using items. So it's kind of a catch-22. For aesthetics, I kind of pulled from Warhammer Fantasy Battles with the warrior priests of Sigmar. I always liked the way these guys looked, especially in this key art from Warhammer Age of Reckoning, which was an MMO for Warhammer Fantasy back in the day. I like the idea of them wielding this big old hammer and swinging it, bashing up undead in the dungeon. But HeroQuest in its current incarnation definitely leans towards high fantasy instead of dark fantasy. So there's not going to be any brands on the forehead or anything like that with our Cleric hero. I kept their design sort of more light, and I kept the lion motif, which you see in a lot of different heroes, like the Guardian Knight. I wanted him to be pretty bright as well color-wise. The white garments and the blue sort of neck scarf thing, and a bright red gem as his spellcasting focus. Now, there's no established religion as far as I know in the world of HeroQuest, in the lore, and you could say, well, just make something up. I kind of want to keep this guy as constrained to the lore of HeroQuest and to fit with the current aesthetic of HeroQuest as much as I possibly can. Just because if I use him in a game, I don't want him to stand out. The only reference to a religion in the current incarnation of HeroQuest is in the Wizards of Morcar expansion. There's a town you can send your heroes to, and in that town there is a building called the Cathedral of Hope. Now, it kind of makes sense because the evil forces are called the forces of dread. So what's the opposite of dread? Hope. So I decided that the Cleric's divine source would be the Light of Hope. I think it's generic enough that it works, but also kind of leans towards that obvious, like, we are a light of hope against the dark forces of dread kind of thing maybe. I don't know. And if that sounds overly generic, then it's a good placeholder until we get some good HeroQuest lore. I'm looking at you, Avalon Hill. You got this whole game system, and there's not really a whole lot of lore behind it. Get some writers in there, write some books. There used to be HeroQuest books. Doesn't mean there doesn't have to be any more. Heck, I'd even take like a webcomic series at this point. So mechanically, the Cleric is going to have 6 spells available to them. And kind of like in Dungeons and Dragons, they know all these spells, but they can only prepare a certain number per day. And that falls into the whole sort of convention that we fell into for a lot of heroes that have come out since the core set, that they know 3 abilities. So the Cleric can take 3 of the 6 spells that he knows for a single quest. Now, of those 3 spells, the Cleric can get one back by praying. They can pray at any time that they can take an action. It can be in combat, out of combat. All they have to do is roll a d6. And the prayer becomes less effective as they go along through the dungeon. So if they pray multiple times, they will have a less of a chance to get a spell back. The gods can be fickle. And once you fail a prayer, that's it. No more praying for the rest of the dungeon. So if you're lucky and you roll well, then you're great. But if you're unlucky and you roll poorly, well, you won't get your spells back. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Welcome back if you skipped ahead using the time marker before. Here is the basic lore of the hero. You are the Cleric. Your devotion to the Order of Hope's Light has given you the ability to call on divine powers to aid and protect your allies and yourself from the forces of dread. Your martial abilities allow you to wield a mace and shield. The tenets of your order prevent you from wielding a bladed weapon or using items not associated with divine magic. You may wear any armor other than plate mail, as the heavy plates disrupt the hand movements required for your divine invocations. That's the text that goes on the back of the hero card that just gives you some flavor as to the reasons why your hero can do what they can do. So this means no bladed weapons. That means no daggers, swords, broadswords, anything like that. Not even the spirit blade, which is kind of a big deal for a holy character. So the Cleric has 2 attack dice to start. They have 5 body points and 5 mind points, and 2 defense dice to start. All the heroes start with 2 defense dice. That puts them on par with the elf, but slightly less durable. And if I could think of a hero to replace in the quest, if you were taking just the core heroes, I would replace the elf with the Cleric. Their starting equipment is a mace and the Talisman of Hope. The mace is a 2 attack dice weapon that allows them to reroll one of their hit dice that failed against a undead creature like a skeleton, zombie, mummy, or anything that has the undead keyword, which is sort of a catch-all for future monsters that may come out. The Talisman of Hope is what gives them their ability to pray. The rules for prayer are explained on the card. I'll go into those a little bit later on as well. I also created a couple of future items that you could get for your Cleric to buff them up. There is the Warhammer, which attacks with 3 attack dice and allows you to attack diagonally. That's on par with a longsword, but it also has the same ability as the mace, of course, allowing you to reroll an attack die against an undead. I also gave them an artifact, which is the Blessed Hammer of Light, which allows you to attack with 4 attack dice on cardinal directions, in front or directly in front, to the sides and behind, and 3 attack dice on the diagonal. This kind of is a 2-in-1, allowing you to have your long sword and battle axe kind of dealio. The only other thing it does is that it allows you to reroll that 1 die against an undead. I may buff the Blessed Hammer of Light. I haven't decided yet. The Blessed Hammer of Light also can only be wielded by the Cleric. The other 2, you could, in theory, put them on one of your other heroes, if you so desired. I also created another artifact called the Book of Prayers, which allows you to add 1 to your prayer roll, and it lets you pray 1 additional time if you failed a prayer roll earlier on in the quest. So let's talk about the prayer mechanic. Like I said, if a Cleric wants to get a spell back, they have to pray. They use their action to pray on their turn. When they pray, they roll a d6. The first time that they pray, anything but a 1 or 2 will get one of their divine spells back. It could be whichever one you choose. We'll talk about the spells in just a little bit. The second time you pray, it's a 50-50, a 4 or higher, then on a 5 or a 6, and then finally, from every time that you pray after that, you only get a prayer back on a 6. So you can see how the prayer book would be very useful for a cleric that wants to bring spells back. So let's talk about the spells. I've initially only included 6. There may be more later on that I can think of. We'll see. So the first one is Healing Light. This is sort of a utility heal in the sense that it will heal 4 body points on one hero that the cleric can see, or you can split that healing up and it can heal 2 heroes that the cleric can see for 2 body points. This just gives them a little bit more utility than a basic healing spell. The next is the Blessing of Defense. This sort of works like a potion of defense, but in the sense that it will allow a hero that the cleric can see, it will allow a hero to reroll their defense dice until they suffer a body point of damage. Once they suffer a body point of damage, the effect disappears. The next is a Blessing of Strength. This kind of works like Courage in the fire spells, but it allows a hero to roll 2 additional attack dice the next time that they attack, and if they kill whatever it is that they are fighting, they can immediately make another attack against another adjacent monster, even if they can't attack diagonally. And they can keep doing this until they don't kill something. It's very useful for clearing out a room, and it's only as effective as the hero that you cast it on. But once they've made that attack and there are no more monsters next to them to kill, then the spell disappears. Unlike our next offensive spell, which is Zealotry. Zealotry kind of works the same way, except that it lasts until there are no monsters left in the room. It also allows you to re-roll your attack dice. It doesn't give you any additional attack dice, however. It comes with a kind of a cool effect, which I may have to tweak a little bit. I thought was kind of fun. If you roll all skulls on your attack with Zealotry, keeping in mind you get your re-roll, you can immediately kill whatever it is you're fighting. So it kind of works like a critical hit, if you will. What I may tweak is that the wording is that if you roll all skulls on your attack dice, then you get to kill whatever it is you're fighting. But if you're only fighting with a dagger, you only roll 1 attack die. That means you just have a 50-50 shot of killing something with a dagger, which could be thematic, but at the same time, I think I should make it so that when you're rolling 2 or more attack dice, then you have the opportunity to kill something instantly if you roll all skulls. Because a lot of things only have 2 body points anyway, and the last 2 spells that we have, the only offensive spell that the cleric has is Turn Undead. Now, Turn Undead only works on undead creatures like zombies, skeletons, mummies, anything with the undead keyword. And all it does is it makes it so that every one of the undead in that room have to make a spell break. That means they have to roll a d6, and on a 5 or a 6, they don't take any damage. But if they don't break the spell, they take 1 body point of damage, which means that skeletons and zombies are going to just crumble. And lastly, this spell is very sort of situational because it can make or break a quest, and that's Resurrection. Resurrection, I phrase it as it can be used as soon as a hero dies, or it can be used to bring a hero back later on. It's a very useful spell if you're in a very hard quest. So it can bring a hero back that has died, reached 0 body points, if the cleric is in the room with them. However, if they die on their own, way far away, and once the cleric gets to wherever they died, they can cast Resurrection and bring that hero back. There are lots of ways for heroes to keep themselves from dying, so I think that it's a very sort of niche use spell that you probably wouldn't want to take with you every single time that you're playing the cleric. And that's it. That's the cleric. While I've been talking, you probably saw some of the painting that I did for the Cleric Mini, which I created using Hero Forge, not a sponsor. You also saw some of the cards that I made using a program that I found online for creating HeroQuest cards. All of the art is just Photoshop manipulated things that I got off of itch.io or CC0 stuff, and the cleric art is from the HeroQuest Mini itself. I just used some Photoshop Kung Fu to make it kind of look drawn. No AI here. The only thing that I haven't gotten art of and done art of is the back of the Divine Spells card, which is fine. These aren't final spells anyway, and I'm not an artist. But if you are, and you want to do better, please do so. as long as you don't use AI. So the last thing that I did with the hero is a playtest. Now, the playtest, I used the first quest out of the core-based system, the trial, appropriately so. This quest is sort of infamous for being a little too hard for the first quest for a hero to go on. It does give you the caveat that you can back out at any time. Depending on how seasoned you are as a HeroQuest player, you may want to. I won't spoil too much about it, but this is a very old game, and this is the first quest in that very old game. So I guess mild spoilers for the trial in the original HeroQuest. So the task of the quest is for the heroes to go into this dungeon and kill Verag, a gargoyle. There are many different types of enemies, orcs, goblins, there are even undead enemies in this quest, so it was perfect opportunity for me to test my cleric's abilities. I initially had the cleric going third. I changed that later on to make him go second. It's a rule in HeroQuest that you can either keep the same turn order for heroes or switch it up, so that's what I did. For the wizard, I was doing my best to not use any healing spells, which bit me in the behind later on because my dwarf actually died at the end of this quest. He was killed by an orc of all things. It was my fault, I forgot to heal him, so what are you gonna do? But in this quest, I got to use the Healing Light spell to keep my barbarian alive, which is what the cleric should do. And I got to pray to try to bring that spell back. It worked the first time. The second time I prayed, it did not work. I may need to tweak prayer so that the first time that you pray, you only don't get your prayer on a 1, then keep the same chart. Because that way you can at least get 1 spell back per quest pretty regularly, with always that chance that you're gonna roll that 1. The Blessing of Defense worked really well in the quest to allow my barbarian to roll a bunch of defend die rolls, and the Blessing of Strength worked pretty well too. Those are the 3 spells I took: Healing Light, Blessing of Strength, and Blessing of Defense. I may do another play test and try out some of the other spells. Resurrection, I think, is probably going to work perfectly fine regardless. Turn Undead, I may need to try in a quest that has a lot of undead in it, which is when you would bring that spell anyway. But all in all, I think he performed well. I think he performed not too overpowered, which is one of the things that I always worry about whenever I'm looking at custom HeroQuest content. Is this guy going to be overpowered, and is this guy going to stick out like a sore thumb? And hopefully my cleric has kind of managed to ride that balance. But I want you to tell me. I'm putting the rules for the cleric along with all the cards in the description below for you to download and try out in your own games. If you use it, please comment below, or you can email me at bluewizardstudio@gmail.com. Let me know how your playtest went. If it went great, tell me. If it went terribly, tell me that too. If you have suggestions on things that you would do differently, or things that you would add, or things that you would change about it, please let me know. I would love to try them out and see if they work for the hero. And that's it. Now, again, I'm not the first person to make a cleric hero. I'm sure there's one out there, and I'm sure there's one out there that's very similar. If there is one out there that's very similar, let me know about it in the comments below. What do you think about adding heroes to HeroQuest? What kind of heroes would you make? And please, like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And if you really want to help me out, why don't you consider supporting me on Patreon? A huge thank you to all of my patrons in the Hall of Heroes, and if you would like to join them, you can too, at only $5 a month. Until next time, that's been me. I want to make these videos more often, so the next one may not be a follow-up to a big project. I have thoughts, feelings about things, namely Warhammer 40k 11th edition. Not so much about the rules, but kind of how Games Workshop is just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and how they kind of need a bit of a shakeup. If that's something you're interested in, let me know that too. I'll see you next time, and yeah, Wizard out!
Blue Wizard needs food badly.
This is taking longer than it usually does.
Congratulations! Your name will be recorded in the Hall of Legends for all to see.